Hello dreamers, in today's video I'll try to explain how I animated an entire planet on Dreams. This will be a slightly different tutorial than usual. I will show you the main elements that make up the animation you see here, and then, listen up, I will make the file available to you so that you can also have fun and try to do different things above. I think I did a good job here, especially regarding the three-dimensionality of the scene, and I would be happy if you also used this animation in your projects if you need it. Before continuing, I would like to remind you that this animation is part of a project called Aftermath. If you haven't seen it yet, you can find it on my channel. Thank you for your constant support. Without you, this channel would not exist. Ring the bell, like, comment, and for those who are not subscribed, subscribe, please. The idea was to create a planet alive in animation but dying in story. A planet whose surface was arid and battered by electrical storms and harmful rains. What will happen to our planet if we continue like this? The difficult part for the animation was how to make the clouds realistic, especially their movement. I then created several layers of clouds to make the effect credible, also helping myself with a parallax effect. But let's look in detail at the elements that make up the animation. Let's start with the surface layer of the planet. As you can see here, it was very simple. Drawn on Procreate, the dry surface of the planet. And starting from the center, the surface fades towards the edges to give a bit of three-dimensionality to the globe. To increase the realism of the scene, as you can see, there are other shades that appear behind the planet. I'm hiding this for now. These two levels here make up part of the planet's atmosphere, darkened on the right because the planet is in shadow in that part. As a result, the sunlight comes from this side. The atmosphere is a fundamental element to include. The planet is an object that reflects light, if it has a star nearby, so to speak. Even the atmosphere is influenced by light, and the globe stands out to make us perceive its presence in a completely empty environment. But let's go up the timeline and add another level. The layer we find here has a filter that is very dear to me, the noise filter. I wanted to create a wet effect on the surface, so I applied a noise layer and the result is not bad at all. This filter is really very versatile and I'm using it for a lot of things. I already made a tutorial about it. For those who don't know it, go to the filter options and select noise. Let's increase the first value so that the effect is visible. If instead we modify the turbulence, the effect comes to life. Move to the end of the timeline and expand the keyframe track. Let's increase the value of the travel so that the animation works. The greater the difference between the initial and final value, the faster the movement will be. Remember to set the trend curve to linear. Obviously here I have a very fast movement because there is a lot of difference between the initial value and the final one. Now I'm going to lower it a bit. I want a slower movement, as if it were water seen from above. Basically the initial value is set to 50 and the final one to 51 for a very slow movement. The animation will also depend a lot on its length in the timeline. Depending on your needs, you will have to do some tests. We can then work on the scale to enlarge the noise. and work on the coordinates to move the effect. Do some tests with this filter, I'm sure it will be really useful for you. Another important factor on this layer is the blending mode set to overlay to make the layer below more visible. Another layer above to make everything more uniform. The opacity is very low in this layer, but it blends the surface and water effect layers perfectly. Continuing just above these lights, which are nothing other than the lighting that we see under the clouds. Here the goal is to have the highest possible variety to make the animation realistic and above all not repetitive. There are 3 tracks here to create this variety, but we will find another one farther up. Obviously, on these layers the blending mode is set to add. But now we come to the most difficult element to create, the clouds, especially their movement. Changing the external shape, the perimeter of the clouds dynamically would have been too long a job, frame by frame, especially with so many clouds. There isn't yet a filter on Dreams that allows us to create turbulence of the edges of shapes, but probably with the arrival of the new update we could do something like that, especially if there will be the possibility of animating filters like the Liquify of Procreate. Animating this filter on Dreams would be great. What do you think? But let's get back down to earth. Since I couldn't do anything about all this, I took advantage of what we have available at the moment. Above the levels that make up the globe, I drew the clouds, animated with a parallax effect, and finally with the noise filter I gave them life. All these elements with the clipping mask applied so as not to go outside the limits of the planet. Obviously here drawn with great attention for a truly realistic effect. If you download the file you will find 4 different layers that form the clouds, have different sizes to create as usual the most variety possible for a realistic effect. At this point the animation is still too flat and doesn't seem very three-dimensional. I'll have to add some more layers. Let's start from a level around the edges of the sphere. These here are nothing more than the reflection of the atmosphere and serve to blur the edges of the globe and accentuate the center. As a blending mode exclusion, I could also use add, but it would haven't been too bright. This is also a layer that is partially masked by the planet's base layer. If you haven't seen it yet, I recommend you go and get my tutorial on layer masks and clipping. Now it's time to add the shadow on the right side of the globe to accentuate the three-dimensionality. As said before, the light comes from this side, casting shadow on the right side of the planet. In this case too, the layer has the clipping mask active. But one of the important factors was to be able to keep the lighting flashes visible under this shadow. I had to use the right blending mode, the overlay blending mode. If you look carefully, the lights that appear under the shadowed part on the left are much brighter than those on the right. Learn the harness of the power of blending modes, do lots of testing, try every possibility. As the opacity increases, the highlights on the right of the shadow disappear, while on the left they stand out even more. The perfect storm. If you download the file, you will see that there are two of these levels, and as you will see, they also have movement, for an even more realistic animation. With the last layer, this reflection, we arrive at complete three-dimensionality, make the globe appear truly 3D. With my hand, which I am now convinced is like a torch, the sun on the left creates a reflection on the planet, and the final result is not bad. What do you think? These are all the levels I used for the realization of this Earth of the future reduced to a sterile rock. In the Aftermath project that I'm carrying on, I will have the possibility of experimenting with other things, so stay tuned. In the meantime, I'm having fun with this little project. I wanted to create my own kinetic rush, here on Dreams. In addition to the physics study that helped me to animate the exploding wall, there is the running and jumping animation, on which I will definitely make a tutorial. Very important, especially the animation that connect these two moments between running and jumping, where the 12 principles of animation come to our aid. So turn on the notifications so you don't miss any news. We have arrived at the moment of firewall. As usual, I thank you for being in my company. I remind you that you can find the Dreams file of today's video in the description. Download it. What are you waiting for? And have fun. Thank you so much for watching, and